Okay, and then just give me 2 seconds here. Welcome to whatever day it is for you of isolation during the great global pandemic of 2020-21. I'm going to say it. Don't shoot me for that. Okay, picking back up again with troubleshooting, getting into the actual nitty-gritty is, you know, it's great. And as I said, that here's exactly what's going to happen. The applications are vendor specific. Vendor's going to, you're having problems, you call the vendor pokes around a slight bit and says, oh, it's clearly the network. Washing hands, walking away, okay? That's how it goes. So then you have to prove it. So you're gonna wanna know where things are broken, how things are working or not working, okay? You can follow the rules. And the other thing too is at least, you know, we know for sure it worked, okay? Troubleshooting, IGMP. So we looked at PIM, we looked at the RPs. I have a slide coming up that will kind of tie this together a bit. I can look and try and see, particularly on the switches, right, that actually have users attached. Could be a layer 2 only switch, but I can look at IGMP and I can see what ports, what VLANs actually have multicast receivers on them. So this is great. And you know, you see in here there you can do it in different VRFs if you've VRFed up your switch. I can do it. I can look at an interface. I can go into details. There's a lot I can do with it. And then I could look at snooping. Now, with snooping, we talked about snooping. So snooping is the idea. The switch, layer 2 switch proxies the queries. So it's keeping track of who wants that traffic. And it will forward to the querier the report that we want this group. That when they're done, we are done with this group, okay? And there are things like this report suppression, if we remember that, the way that works with snooping and why it's enabled is someone wants to leave, the switch is actually going to ignore that. Or excuse me, it's not going to ignore it. It's going to take it, hide it, query, verify that the other ports it has still want the traffic for that group, and make that leave go away. So the querier, the router, never has to handle it. So we've taken some of the load off of the layer 3 interface and took it down to layer 2. And on a layer 1 perspective, that the whole snooping also means that I'm not flooding the traffic to all interfaces. I know which interfaces want the traffic, and I'm doing it there. So knowing it's there, knowing it's on, a vendor sometimes will have you turn off snooping just to make sure that we're flooding the traffic now. So for some reason, the switch isn't understanding or isn't getting a report from that device, that vendor device, that vendor piece of software, that we can see that there's either something wrong with snooping, always a possibility, or there's something wrong with the operating system client that is supposed to be getting this traffic. For some reason or other, in that case, I'd probably be wanting to sniff the traffic, like restart that machine, sniff the traffic, looking to see if it ever does a report. If it never does the report, then it's a client problem. It may need to get fixed by turning off snooping, so I'm flooding traffic, but I'm really annoyed with the vendor. I want to be, when are you going to fix this problem? Okay. So I added this general concepts. For any source multicast, all layer 3 devices need to be using the same RP or set of RPs joined with MSEP. So that's one thought. I put a bracket around that for any group. There can be different RPs for different groups, but if my source and my receivers, first hop and last hop routers, and the routers in between, and the routers in between, you heard that, right? All need to be looking to the same RP, particularly the first hop, last hop, so that they know I need to send a join this way. I need to send a join that way. This is where the joins need to go. That the source and receiver are connected. If they go to different ones without MSDP, connecting those two RPs, then they will not connect. Fail. Okay. PIM needs to be enabled on all the links, including this between the source and the RP, between the receiver and the RP. Now, I said if needed. Why? Because source specific doesn't have an RP. Dense mode doesn't have an RP either. So if you're old and you don't have dense mode, you don't have to have an RP. Then this is not applicable, right? And between the source and the receiver, full path. And if you have alternate routes, well, you want to make sure those are also have PIM turned on. So some of the testing I'm doing, so why I showed you the show IP PIM RP mapping is that's point one up there. We're all using the same RP. So as I follow the path, then I see that, yep, we're all using the same RP. When it's different, that's why I had the mapping agent and the RP announcing different addresses with Anycast. That the mapping agent always showed the actual switch, but the RP was the Anycast for redundancy. That way I knew that, this mapping agent is doing the right thing. How do I need to fix that? Okay. And the PIM, okay, step. Multipath is essential. I had to upgrade the word. I think yesterday I used a less emphatic word. Where there are equal cost paths along the route. And it's a good idea even if there isn't. So far, okay, Scouts Honor haven't run into any problems turning on multipath. Certainly it can if someone's Cisco expert on multipath from Cisco and they want to say, this is why you don't want to do it. Love to hear you. Boundaries can block traffic. So be on the lookout for boundary statements. And in ACLs and interfaces, IGMP filters, there's a lot of different, there are ways, and we're going to talk about the IGMP filters in a coming segment, not this one. And the unicast routing has to work. If the unicast underlay is not working, if the routes aren't there, if you have layer 1 physical breaks in the network, it's just not going to work. Right? Web browsing does not work unless DNS works and you have all the underlying networking work and your firewall's doing the right thing, and there's a whole bunch of things that all need to work for that to work. Don't blame the web server because you can't get through because you have a physical cable break. That's not the web server's problem. Unless it's a secret robot that chewed the cable. Yeah, sure, no. Rise of the machines, right? Troubleshooting. And this is kind of a free associated sample working through this. Last stop router, on a last stop router, does the star comma G exist? Why do I care about that? Well, if you're doing IGMP v2, that when I send the report, it's got to create that. If that hasn't happened, there's something missing. So the application working at all. So that's certainly a possibility. So if the user says, they're like, oh, like this isn't working. Okay, I want you to get into the application. Okay, let me start it. How do you know it wasn't working if it wasn't running? But that kind of stuff happens. We've all done this long enough that, yes, we've had calls exactly like that. So is the application even working? And it could be a more fundamental fail. Okay. You can do a join on that last hop interface just to see if the star comma G shows up, and since you've done a join, then you should see the S comma G show up for whatever sources, assuming the RP is working. So you had one, it's like maybe you have an application problem, and this join is saying that, okay, now I got a star comma G, and look, I got an S comma G. What's wrong with the app? Okay, I see star comma G, I don't see an S comma G. Show IPM route, well, that's how it's going to show up in the first place, right? You're going to see where does the incoming interface point on the star comma G. So that incoming interface always points to, for any source multicast, it points back to the rendezvous point. So that if it's not pointing towards the rendezvous point, you have a problem. If it says no, and there should be an RP somewhere else, you have a problem. So that first one right there gives you a lot of information. And like I said, if it says no, it thinks it's the RP. Now, if all I'm doing is I have a group, say a server's on one VLAN, on one SVI, and then the receivers on another on the same layer 3 switch, very same. No HSRP, very same switch. As long as IP multicast routing is turned on, it should work. Because the switch is active, it will act as an RP. It'll see, hey, I have a sender, receiver. Let me connect you to sender. It should immediately create the shortest path because it's from one interface to the other. There's no other path, right? So should get you that T flag pretty quick on your MROP. Okay. Show IPPIM RP mapping, and that's one of the things I can start going through. Hey, do they line up? Is what I have on my last hop the same as what's on my first hop, which was on the same as the RP? One thing you could do is that you can, particularly if you're doing this as static, so static, I say on my last hop, I say IPPIM RP mapping IP address. That's it. So I've just said that RP is authoritative for everything. On the RP, I said IP IPPIM RP address, and then an ACL, and I put in some, say, permit 239.200.0.0, 00255.255. Okay, so I think I'm authoritative for that. So this last hop gets a group, say, like 224.0.1.1 NTP. It's going to try and send joins back to the RP, but the RP is going to reject it because it's like, I'm not an RP for this. I know what I'm supposed to do. This is the range I'm doing, not that. Go away. Go away. So as you take it along, and I need to also check the intermediate points as well, just to make sure they're not throwing a curveball and trying to send this traffic, leftwise. Like things are kind of working, and then it takes this left turn. If I have any cast running and I have multiple RPs that are supposed to be linked, I want to do this show IP MSDP SA cache. So that's source announce, MSDP multicast source discovery protocol. And when I'm an RP, I get a new source, I share it with my MSDP peers. Hey, here's this new source, here's its info. If they have receivers, that means they can now connect them because they know that source. And there's some work that has to happen about doing joins and big unicast, hello to pick up the traffic, that sort of thing. Fine. And along the route, I can see, okay, so sender register with the RP. Because if he hasn't made it to the RP, we're sunk. First hop, last hop, RP mapping, make sure they're using the same RP. And like I said, the RP as well. T flag not setting. Okay, can I check the path with ping and trace route? Is the unicast route workable? If there, for some reason that we know about this guy, but we can't set a T flag because there's some routing problem, and mtrace command, and I have a slide that shows this a little better, that'll help you figure out, oh, there's a PIM statement missing. So we have, at one point, there's a branch, and the unicast route wants to go left, and multicast wants to go right. Or in some of these cases, that the unicast route diverges. Just so look for that, and probably it'll be something like missing PIM statements. Okay. Multipath statements where equal cost paths exists. Yeah, helpful thing. So if it's particularly, it's an intermittent breakage where it was working, an example. So Philips sells these bedside monitors. They're in hospitals, are typically, Philips provides an entire infrastructure. So they'll provide switches that these things connect to, and then they'll attach to some server. So there's a whole infrastructure. You can buy it for things like ambulatory surgical centers where you don't necessarily need as much gear. So in that case, they'll use your switch. What they were doing was they were using Multicast. Rather than programming the IP of the central server or having the bedside monitor when it flips on do some sort of broadcast and find this local server that was aggregating data, it wanted to talk immediately to the main server, and it used the multicast group to do that. It's an interesting way of doing it. There were some issues though. So the monitors would come up and work, and they were on a reservation, and then at some point they don't have a patient, so you turn the monitor off and come back, flip it on, doesn't work. Somewhere along that point was an equal cost path, and the hash for unicast swapped which direction to go. Multicast said, I'm going left. Unicast now said, I'm taking this right. Therefore, that interface, the next hop up to the right, said, no, 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 no. That is not the correct path. I will drop you. I'm expecting you to come the other way. So you go across, say, with that diamond I was showing you earlier, it wants to go left, you go right, you're coming in on a different interface on the top of the diamond, and it says, no, 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 it only comes in the other way, dropping you. So that can give you some weird intermittent. Now, the first fixing before we understood multipath was change the reservation. Then if we're lucky, what happened was the hash now agreed with the unicast route and it worked again. So it seemed magical, not understanding what we're doing fully, that magically it started working again. But it was painful. So I had to go create new reservations, delete the old reservation, create a new one, get the back-end guys to fix on the server. There's a bunch of stuff had to happen now to get this working again. And then if they shut it off again, that it broke. So bad. And then this one, I know I did this yesterday. Let me, let's see. What am I looking to here? Look at my Facebook. Somewhere, where is it? No. There we go. Let's maybe log in. No, it didn't. No, it wasn't that one anyway. Let me try to link. I clip it, grab it. This is a good one. See if it's gonna let me do it without. Initially, maybe log in, which is always annoying. Getting around to it. I had it up yesterday, but I use. I forgot. I've got a little name of the darn thing. The idea is it puts tabs to sleep that you're not using to save memory. Yes, here we go. So this is a great document. What it does, it takes you through some of the tools and teaches you how to use them. So better than what I can do, this is right from the horse's mouth. This is Cisco. Yay, boys. Thank you. And ladies, thank you. So it walks through a lot of what I have here. And I will tell you some things that come up as well. But I wanted to show you there's mstats. Haven't used that one as much, but this one, mtrace, is useful. So here's the path it got all the way through. Where did it break? Where am I going to focus my energy on the link? So if this is the last one, I'm looking at the link between these two. What's wrong with them? It helps when I have some sort of network diagrams that show me what the path is going to be anyway. But if I don't have to, I'm just, show IP route towards, if I know the source. If I have no idea what the source is, this gets really complicated. Like, well, we have a source, we're not really sure what it is. That's one where you want to verbally tongue lash your application support people. It's like, you have no idea how your application works. Well, right. How am I supposed to tell if it's not work? How am I supposed to fix it if you can't tell me how it works? Yes. And that is part of our job requirements. Thank you. Is magically figuring out how other people's stuff works when they don't know. Does it sound cynical? Maybe it is. I don't know. So source, destination, group. Now, I will tell you, sometimes they don't understand which is sourcing with this group, which with this Philips monitoring I was talking about, when I first thought, I was thinking server source. No. The monitor is the one sending the information. So it's actually the source, and the receiver is the server. That's how it works. Because it did a multicast. Multicast defined the server, and then there was a unicast between the server and the monitor to do the next round of configuration, and then it can attach to a local device via multicast, but a different group, and stream data, and then that local device would aggregate it and send to the main server. Okay, interesting design. They changed it actually. We weren't the only people having problems with them. So they changed it. Multicast it can be such a pain that vendors will actually drop that functionality rather than continuing to support their enterprises that don't understand multicast. Kind of sad. But this is a great document. Links in the PowerPoint. So take a look. Okay, and this in particular is going to focus on mtrace. It's a great tool, but there's a lot of other ones. Take a look at all those different commands. It's great. It's a great reference. Okay. And then I had all these components, and we've gone through everything on this picture now. So we've looked at IGMP, except for one thing. That's going to be a future module, wireless. We're going to talk about wireless and how to do wireless. Multicast and some of the special considerations for it. That's a future topic. If you're really not a wireless guy at all, there's a minimum amount of stuff you're going to want to see anyway in that, because as a wired guy, you're going to be responsible for things like getting the WLC talking to the APs. And there's a design piece of that. So even as a designer, you want to understand, if you're not the wireless designer, you still need to understand what's happening on your wire. So I recommend that unit anyway. Okay, and then I had a to-do list. Create that list of multicast apps with their technical requirements and current configs. Technical requirements. Your first line support, either internal or with the vendor, oftentimes looks at you really blankly. That's great. Somebody has a doc. Somebody may actually have some beautiful PowerPoints that show you all these things about how it talks multicast to here and does unicast to there and that you may have to fill back in, go have them like actually log into the app and figure out what they actually set for groups, if that hasn't been done yet. If you're designing, if this is greenfield, brand new, hey, this is a great time to get in there and start looking and like, okay, they need a block of addresses. Here's how I want to do that. And then I said this: decide and/or document. Decide if it's greenfield, document if it's existing. Where these multicast apps need to operate by application, not just sort of, oh, I need multicast running all over here, right? This app is going to operate in this little sandbox. This one's going to operate in that sandbox. This is some overlap between those two apps. There's another app that touches everything. You need to understand all those different boundaries. Now, again, if you alone are a switch, even it can be a big one, a 9410, right? A lot of ports on a 9410, fully outfitted, Catalyst, of course. And then if you're and a router and a single ISP, and you're not doing any kind of multicast to the yeah, it's pretty simple. It doesn't hurt though to have documented all this stuff. If you're ever acquired, you're going to be this smart guy when they come in. They're like, well, we want to move the server here, and you're like, okay, well, multicast. We need to extend multicast to make that work. To know what that is, and like, can we do IGMP v3? Can we do source specific? Having all those things lined up, documented somewhere, when they come in and do it. Frankly, in some of these acquisitions, they look at you like, yeah, you don't know anything, because you're been running this little shop. You're kind of you're good at a number of things. You're maybe great at maybe one thing, but they've got people with this super depth in this big old company that acquired you. But hey, be able to do that can be very impressive. Like, wait, it has this stuff together that can be really useful. Look at the needs for multicast on your wireless network. I'm a believer in this. Build the capability of multicast on wireless. However, to be really clear, for the wireless client, the VLAN attached to that WLAN needs to have PIM turned on for multicast to work, other than between each other, assuming they can do peer-to-peer, assuming that if you don't have it turned on, then so I can build that infrastructure between the APs and the controller. So if I want to start running multicast, I can do it. It's turning this WLAN needs it, turn it on this VLAN, turn PIM on this VLAN, and I'm good. I can do that with a fair amount of safety. So I think it's always good to build that. But know too, if I don't want to run across the WAN and I've got a controller that has a bunch of small sites attached to it, that gets interesting. So if I think I need to do multicast, then you need some other stuff. That's a feature module. Keep you listening, keep you coming. Where are you going to place those RPs? And the ranges they're going to advertise. So you can have a campus, you could have like a divisional or regional, you could have a, some sort of RP that covers North America, and then you could have some enterprise RP that needs to cover or sets of RPs probably, right? Redundancy, next thought. Where are you going to put those? What makes the most sense? If the traffic's all contained inside a campus, have its RP in the campus. Don't have it pop out on the WAN. Why do that? Why send that traffic? So think about where they need to be placed. And on design, say I've got layer 3 at the access layer. So maybe I have a collapse core, even if I have the extra layers, I probably wouldn't want to hang the RP off one of the edge devices, or the access layer devices. That just would be odd. I would assume, now, if that's the only place it's going to be, I got to run this one little corner. Putting an RP there on that access layer 3 access switch may make sense. If I want more robustness in a design, I probably would stick it closer to the core or on the core. That's probably where I do it. Depends on where the layer 3 are. If they're at the distribution layer, probably distribution is where I'm going to hang that off of, okay? And if you're doing a lot of multicast, think about having a dedicated separate router. So it's the RP, and that's all it does. No, it doesn't route any traffic. It only deals with multicast. That's it, okay? Important question, does your first line staff know how to do basic troubleshooting? Now, I don't necessarily mean the first service desk guy who picks up the call. I was there a long time ago, and I remember some of these calls where someone told me, something wasn't working, and all I could say for some of it, it was Adobe systems. Adobe had a very diverse sets of technology running. So they did try rebooting, and they're like, "It's a server. What do you?" Sorry, don't know. Right? I learned a lot since then, but sorry for a setting guy that was really mad at me. I didn't know better. We did our best. But if everything has to go to the me's of the world, this stuff doesn't get fixed very quickly. You want to make sure they can do some real basic troubleshooting. And, the more likely they are, be able to pull out a couple of these tricks like this show IPM route count. If I'm looking at the last hop and the vendor's like, oh, see something's wrong, I'm doing show IPM route count, and I see, or show IPM route group, and I see there's a receiver, or this is a source, excuse me, that group, outgoing interface, VLAN I'm on, cool, and I can do count. I'm like, yep, I'm getting traffic. I see the traffic counters, count, couple times. They're incrementing, right? You're sending. I can do snooping, I do turn off snooping. There's a couple things, not a huge lot. I did right there, and their client still isn't getting it. What else is wrong? Is there a Windows firewall, right, that's blocking the traffic? The more they can do, the less has to be rolled up to you. Certainly some of the more complicated things, yeah, that's great. But what do they need to know? Can you build classes like this? Okay. Now, you can send them to my material, but I am asserting copyright on it so that, you can't just take this and use it internally in your company, right? That if you want to do that, we should talk. We can maybe do a consulting arrangement to do something, who knows, but just, can they do that? And then the administratively scoped range, start figuring that out. How are you going to break that up in particular? And don't allow your vendors just walk in and say, well, you're going to use group number blah, 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 blah. Take a look at IANA and make sure that that's really their group. If they're picking random numbers out of their backside, no, we're not allowing that. It should fit in your administratively scoped range unless they have something registered. Because what I don't want is eventually someone registers that thing and then, you know, and frankly, sometimes there are some of these groups, and we already showed you source specific, that if they stick in source specific because they don't know better, that you can cause problems later. And there are other groups, like GLOP is one of them. You're gonna like that one, global, I forget now, that for use on the internet, that again, I start doing that, I can create very weird problems for myself if I'm not careful. So force them into that range. Document this stuff. Now, be careful because some of those, like SolarWinds IPAM, by default wants to pings. Well, it pings, it's going to start making a mess out of things because any listener on that group should respond, and it's going to get kind of weird data out of it. You need something. You can turn off pinging for those groups, and then make sure as you're documenting this stuff, include what group is responsible for the app. Because what's going to happen later on is you're looking at these groups and go, we're still using group X, I can really use to reclaim some space. Nobody knows what app ran that thing. It's because some of this stuff is very transitory. Oh, I'm over. I'm sorry. Some of the stuff is very transitory. So things like Informacast with Cisco phones. So what somebody does, they're sending to a group. I'm not clear on all the little details application-wise, but phones are coming up on a group as receivers. I'm not sure if it's the server or the phone that you're on is the one that's now the source. Regardless, this event is happening for the duration of the call. So if I'm doing show IPM route and you're not doing that right this second, I'm not going to see it. Well, we had a problem with the call. We need you to troubleshoot it to do our paging. It didn't work. Can you do a page? You may want something like a blank audio file, long one, 20 minutes, half an hour, that you can, no sound, that you can do just to have this thing run. Some of my engineers had some sort of funny thing that they were playing, and there happened to be people still in the building when they tested something and it didn't go over well. So just saying that. But if I didn't know this range was assigned out to them, then I've got this whole problem now of like, I'm not sure if it's in use or not. You may come back to them and they say, no, we don't do that anymore. We don't want it. We not doing it. We don't have the application anymore, whatever. You get somebody to sign off and say, I'm done with this, so you can reuse it, okay? Thanks for sticking with me. Sorry I ran over. YouTube channel. Subscribe, get your friends to subscribe, get your whole company to subscribe. You know, they want to watch my stuff. Awesome. Eventually, that'll allow me to have something sane as a URL rather than UCZ3. Got it. LinkedIn is where I'm posting this stuff. Other social media channels. I had friends who drop in, but they weren't focused on training and development. So that's really what I'm trying to do. So that's why I'm using LinkedIn as the vehicle. There's a great community of people doing that. There's a lot of people who right now are, even if they're not doing as full on a free course like this, they're doing other material to try and help you out, get connected and improve your knowledge, improve your skill set, improve your employability. So great to do that. And then ask questions, comments on these, either LinkedIn or YouTube. I see them. As appropriate, I'll respond to them with questions. If you're like, I don't really understand X, it may come in a future video. Maybe if it's just a short, like, I could maybe direct you to other documentation or sort of answer your question. If it's oh my God, I need to train my entire company to do this, can you do that? Then, we'll break out into some, communication and work that out. So those are all options, okay? Thanks for watching, and I will see you tomorrow. Tomorrow's a new segment. Since I actually recorded this one, yay! It's good stuff. Kind of drawing everything together, trying to reinforce some points, right? And then I've developed new sets of material, and one of the pieces is securing multicast. that'll be at this point next week, early next week. The securing thing. When I first did this, I was so excited to get it to work and work consistently that just kind of like my first in networking, there's a lot of stuff I didn't want to do. Like I didn't want to do quality of service on like fractional T1s. It's like, oh my gosh, if I got 128K and I'm trying to divide up the bandwidth, it's not enough for anybody to begin with. But so, I didn't. There's a lot of times we weren't blocking a lot of things internally. We were so happy that things are actually, getting and working consistently that we didn't, right? Well, we paid for that over the years. And there are some downsides of going wild. So you set up all your RPs to advertise that at full multicast range. Interesting things happen that you don't necessarily want happening. So we'll go over that beginning next week. Starting tomorrow, we're going to try and tie all this stuff together, do some more. I have a quiz, so it should be Friday. Right? No, today's Thursday. So it'll be Monday. It should be Monday next week. We should be going through some quiz questions like, what command do you want to do this, right? That'll be great practice, right? Can you answer those questions? I didn't do spend a lot of time with cute PowerPoint effects for that. I could have done sounds and things, but I didn't. But whatever. If you're here, you like me anyway. That's a Sally Field moment, if you know what that means. Anyway, I'll see you tomorrow.